Hello, I'm Tamas from Polygon Flow. I'd like to introduce you to the new features and changes in Dash 1.8 through a couple of scenes. We will quickly create a procedural forest road, add details to a street corner, and show how to easily blend and customize 3 Megascans materials. So let's go. Let's get started with the new Dash UI bar. It has been completely revamped in Dash 1.8. The most important tools are now instantly accessible from the menus. This makes it easier to find and use the major tools, as well as the smaller utility actions available in Dash. But if you prefer the older search method, you can still use that too. Another cool new feature of Dash 1.8 is our new AI assistant. We have integrated ChatGPT-4 with our new documentation into Dash, so you can ask it questions anytime. Since the AI might not always have all the answers, you can access our updated documentation anytime by clicking here. Also, feel free to reach out to us on Discord if you get stuck. We will respond to your questions as soon as we can. I have an idea of a scene I want to create, and I've gathered some reference images for it. I'd like to make a road passing through a forest. Let's ask the AI how it will create the scene. Simply drag the image into the window and describe what you want to achieve. The more detailed our description is, the more accurate responses we will get. And here's the answer. So it suggests we first create a terrain and use the road tool to create a path on it. After that, we should scatter vegetation across the terrain. As you can see, it outlined a complete workflow for us. But let's not rush ahead. I click on Create in the Dash toolbar, then select the Create Terrain Mesh under the Common section. The new Tools panel pops up. In the future, I can easily switch between my active tools by clicking here. And by the way, you can always open the Tools panel by clicking the Edit icon up here in Dash. I set up my desired parameters like scale and turbulence. And I'm happy with my terrain. Let's see what the AI assistant recommends for the next step. By clicking on the history, I can review my previous searches. I should continue with my road, which requires a curve. I ask how to create it, and here's the answer. It's located under Create Curve Tools. Here we can adjust settings such as mode and the spacing between the points we'll draw. Let's draw that curve. I can easily modify my point density later by holding down Ctrl and the middle mouse button, then dragging the mouse left or right. Let's create the road. This can also be found under the Curve Tools section. Click on Create Roads. After selecting my curve, I click on the plus button. Here I can adjust the desired width, as well as resolution and smoothness. Currently, my road doesn't perfectly align to my terrain. I can fix this in the Geometry Settings section. Under Projection Mask, I can choose where my road should be projected onto. But before selecting a different mesh, I click on the spin icon to lock the current tool so that the road tool remains open in the Tools panel. Then I select my terrain and click on the plus icon. After that, I also check the full mesh option. I've created the base road mesh. My reference image shows that the markings are located on the edges of the road, and I can address this with a simple method. But first, let me introduce Dash's new feature to you. I click on Board on the Dash toolbar. This brings up the board where I can drag my reference images. It's similar to Milanote or PureRef, but integrated directly within the engine. The boards can be saved and will remain in the foreground throughout. In order to have the road markings be easily adjustable, I will use the road tool again to create them, instead of using a road texture. I can save this setup as a preset by clicking on this icon. This way, if I create a new road mesh along my curve, I can apply the saved settings to it. I select my curve again and create a new road. After that, I apply the saved preset. To better see what I'm doing, I need to add a material to my road. By clicking on the content icon, I will open the Dash content browser that lets you use the free Polyhaven library, the free IES library, and also easily use your downloaded Megascans assets. I choose a Megascans material and drop it on the road. I then reduce the width of my road. Next, I will align the top mesh with the bottom one. My reference image shows that the markings are located at the edges of the road, and I can solve this with a simple method. Let's move the lines to the edges of the road. I can do this with the path width section of the road tool panel. I simply set the number of the duplicates and I set how far apart they should be. If I want, I can also keep the center line. This can be saved as a preset as well. I have decided I want dashed lines in the middle of the road. So I will create another road mesh. To do this, I repeat the previous steps, create a new road along the curve, and use a Save Road preset. In the Tools panel, I scroll down to the Split section. Here, I can slice up my road and create a dashed line. Then I align it to the road surface as well. I'm satisfied with my road so far. Let's add some materials to the scene. I can modify my materials in the Tool panel. Clicking on the icon in the top left corner brings up the list of the tools currently active in the scene. Here I can select the Edit Material tool. I can adjust the properties like tiling, brightness, and other attributes. As the next step, I will show you how to use the Scatter tool to scatter some vegetation alongside the road, following the workflow outlined by the AI assistant. I have downloaded a few plants I'd like to use. I select them from my content browser, and while holding down Ctrl, I drag and drop them onto the terrain. I click on Scatter here. In the tool panel, I can adjust parameters such as density or the scale of plants. The next step is to mask out the plants from the road. For this, I scroll down in the tool panel to proximity masking. I will select the road as the object, but before doing that, I click on the pin icon to keep the current Surface Scatter tool panel open. I then select the road and adjust the distance. I want the scattered plants to appear only near the road, not across the entire terrain. So I invert the distance parameter and increase it approximately to the range where I want the plants to spread. Then in Proximity Mask 2, I select the road again and remove the plants from the road itself. I can save the Proximity Mask value as a reference, which can be applied to multiple scattered actors, allowing me to control several scattered objects together and save time. I select the distance parameter, and by clicking on the icon next to it, I choose the Convert to Reference option. If I want, I can offset it here. Let's do the same for Proximity Mask 2. Next, I will scatter a few rocks. For proximity masking, I select the road as the mask and use the distance reference I created in my previous scatter. I do the same for Proximity Mask 2. I can see that both scatters respond when I adjust the shared distance reference. It's a simple example, but the reference tool has countless applications for managing large scenes efficiently. Now I will use the Proximity Mask 3 to mask out the scattered vegetation with the rocks. Creating the forest is still left. I have downloaded a few trees from the Epic Marketplace, and I want them to be available in the Dash content browser. I open the content browser, then select the current project folder. I select the folder I want to import and click the Compute Assets button. This operation allows Dash AI to tag my content, so I can search for them by attributes and not just names. I'll explain more about this in the second part of the video. Once the computing is finished, I select the trees I want to scatter and drag them into the scene. I click on Scatter here, and I will use the proximity masking techniques I've covered earlier. I try to match the scene as closely as possible to the reference image. I will use the Dash camera to compose my scene. I simply type camera into the Dash toolbar and select the Create Camera option. In the tool panel, I can adjust the aspect ratio, apply color grading, and use post-process effects to replicate the look of my reference image. I need to adjust the trees a bit more. If I want, I can choose a grading preset and tweak it accordingly to my needs. Another cool feature of the camera tool is that I can either drag in an image or use the Dash image board to extract the grading from an existing image onto my Dash camera. Two more things are missing from the image: the leaves alongside the road and the fog in the background. I've gathered some fallen leaves models from the Megascans library. I select them and drag them over my curve. I choose the Scatter Here option, and Dash automatically scatters the leaves alongside the curve. I adjust the parameters to my liking, and under Parallel Width, I use the distance parameter to duplicate the leaves and spread them out along both sides of the road. Next, I type in fog and search for the Create Fog card option. I can freely adjust the scale, wind, and other attributes. After a bit of fine-tuning, my forest road is complete. As you can see, within a few minutes, we've built the foundation of a forest road, and it's completely procedural. Whenever I move the curve points, the road and the forest follow seamlessly. I made a few adjustments in the end. As you can see, I easily changed the color grade and the camera settings with Dash. I have prepared the street corner scene. In this part of the video, I introduce the Dash tools in the Place menu and show how to quickly add a lot of detail to your scene. Let's take a look at the Select tools. These can significantly speed up your workflow. I will select this trash can, and by clicking on the Select Nearby, Dash will automatically select the surrounding assets. It often happens that after a long rendering, I notice that an asset is not aligned correctly with the ground and it's floating in the air. The Project Below option solves this issue by aligning the selected assets to the ground. If we want to randomize the placement of our asset, the Random Swap tool can help us. From this menu, I can easily adjust the pivot point of each asset. We can also randomize the parameters of the assets, such as their scale and orientation. Now, I want to quickly fill this scene with content and details. I have downloaded an asset pack from the Epic Marketplace. These assets are not yet available in the Dash content browser, but I can easily fix this by using the Dash AI tagging system. I select the current project option. Here I find the location of the asset pack. I select the folder that I want to import. I can choose whether I want AI tags for the assets or not. I check the box to enable AI tagging and click on the Compute button. As I mentioned in the first part of the video, the Dash AI tagging system assigns tags to the assets, making it easy for me to search through them. Once the tagging process is complete, I can right-click on the asset to see its properties. I can see that this asset has a lot of text now. Dash recognizes this asset based on its appearance. I can also add my own tags to the assets if I feel some important tags are missing, or if I want to categorize together some assets under one tag. Additionally, I can search for assets with a similar look and properties. Let's search for something using a keyword. I type in the word container. Assets start to show up, but I can also search for color, or even combine tags. I search for a few bottles and show you how to fill up the trash cans with them. I select a few and drag and drop them into one of the bins. Under the previously used place menu, I select the physics drop command. The selected assets fall into the bin. Then I duplicate them until they start spilling over the top. If I move one bottle, it affects the others, allowing me to arrange them as I like. But maybe I don't need so many bottles. This should be enough. I select a few bottles and adjust them to create a composition. Using the physics drop tool, they fall to the ground. I want to quickly fill my scene with large piles of rubble and trash to add more details. I ask the AI assistant for a recommendation on how to do this. I type in my question. The AI suggests using the physics paint tool, so let's go with that. I can find it under the place menu. When I click on it, Dash indicates that no assets are selected for scattering. I could drop in some assets to the scene, but I will use another method. Here I choose some assets from the content browser and drag them into my scene by holding down Ctrl. I select Physics Paint. By holding down Shift, Ctrl and the middle mouse button, I can adjust the size of my brush. I paint a few piles of rubble. If I want to adjust the piles, I can do so by holding the middle mouse button. Finally, I scatter a few decals on the street. I select a few from the content browser and while holding down Ctrl, just drag them into the scene. Then choose Scatter here. In the Tools panel, I can set how many decals I want and how densely they should be scattered. With the tools I have shown so far, we can create detailed scenes extremely quickly, but in the next part of the video, I demonstrate how to maximize the potential of what Dash offers. In the third part of the video, I will showcase the Material Blend tool of Dash. I created a terrain from the Create menu. I make sure it has a high subdivision for nanite displacement later. I think I'm satisfied with it and I click on this icon to bake it into a static object. I will enable nanite support for the mesh. I will type nanite into the search bar and select Vector Enable Nanite. If you need help, you can always gather information in the Dash documentation. For example, I can search here for displacement. I also activate tessellation in the project by typing it into the search bar. I downloaded some materials from the Megascans library. I select 3 materials and while holding down Ctrl, I drop them onto the terrain. I choose the Apply Blend Material option. I click on the Edit button, then select Edit Blend Material. First, I'm gonna set the global tiling. I can adjust which material I want to be in the foreground. I will create a muddy terrain with some puddles. I tweak the wetness and displacement a bit. Here I can adjust the snow and I can imitate raindrops on the terrain. I want the mood of an early winter morning, where the melted snow and mud have frozen. As you can see, I can make a very detailed blend. I think this ground is a perfect base for a medieval scene. I'm using a few assets from the medieval game environment pack, which I downloaded from the Epic Marketplace. And I start to create the environment. Let's start with setting up the camera. Under the Create menu, I select the Create Camera and set the aspect ratio and focal length to my preference. Next, let's continue with the gravel path. I draw a curve and scatter a megascan gravel asset on the terrain. I use the curve in the proximity masking section and create a 2-lane gravel path. I bring a wooden post into the scene. Then, from the scatter menu, I select the path scatter option. In the curve section, I add the path curve, and for the scatter, I select the wooden post. I arrange the asset in 2 rows. Then I play with the density and the random rotation. I also scattered some foliage around the buildings. I can also add snow on top of objects in the Material Tool panel. I scattered some megascans trees in the background. I've also added some cliffs and scattered a few rocks. Now for the final details. I can easily choose some assets from the content library. I use the physics tools from the place menu. I want to make the scene foggier. I select the Create Fog Plane option and I tweak the settings until I get the result I like. Lastly, I fine-tune the scene using the camera post-process settings. By using the color grading in Dash, I can establish a solid foundation for further color grading later in DaVinci or Premiere Pro. And there you have it. We have discovered the biggest new features in Dash 1.8. We explored the new Dash UI bar or revamped documentation, the new AI assistant, and the dashboard. I demonstrated how you can easily access or frequently use world-building tools, such as the Road tool, the Physics tools, and how to use the Dash Blend Material tool to create more detailed environments. If you enjoyed this video, try out Dash for free. Join us on our Discord server, where you can showcase your creations. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.